in about us being more efficient and more effective. It seems amazing that in a time where you can have Postmates, and Uber, Lyft, Amazon, and track purchases and products, that we cannot figure out who has a room available in the city to shelter a very deserving resident of our city, unhoused resident of our city. That should be something that we should be able to do promptly. Other than that, Madam Chair, thank you again for your leadership on this matter, and speak in favor of the motion to continue this matter so that we can, as we say in Sacramento, the matter's not yet cooked, and so that we can continue the process of developing the legislation, but one that merits the challenges. Thank you.
Mr. Krikorian?
Well, thank you very much, Madam President, and thank you, colleagues. I've wanted to listen more than speak today, and I'm glad that I did. And let me thank Mr. Blumenfield, first of all, for teeing up this conversation and moving this forward, because this has been one of the better discussions that we've had on the most complicated, difficult, social crisis, public health crisis, and human rights crisis of our time. We've talked about homelessness a lot. We've done a lot of things, on different aspects of this issue. And it always seems to be, no matter what we do, exceptionally and, in my view, grossly unnecessarily polarizing. And I heard 14 of my colleagues speak today, and I agreed with something that every single one of them said. And I think this kind of conversation is what we need to do to develop a consensus around solutions. And it is never as simple as saying, don't do this enforcement thing because you haven't done the thing I want you to do. Or only do this, but don't do the other thing. It is never that simple. Man. And with respect, Mike, I know that it was a rhetorical device that you were doing when you called upon ITA to put up those pictures. But I could put up those pictures for the rest of this meeting. Every single member of the council could put up those pictures. They could put up the pictures of the permanent supportive housing that we've built. They could put up the pictures of the bridge home shelters that we've built, the safe parking lots that have been open. In my case, the Services Navigation Center, first one in the city, 185 beds of bridge home shelter. I could put up the pictures of the 3 cabin communities that I have ready to go and underway already, that will provide sufficient capacity to house every single homeless person in my district who's living on the streets right now. Every single one. So it is unfair to the public, I think, and it's unfair to
misrepresenting what's going
on when we say that we're just not doing anything. It's just not true. And I know the people who want to accuse us of the vilest sorts of evil that call into these meetings believe that's
true. You mean your constituents?
But
he's talking about his constituents.
Have we done enough? Absolutely not. And
just so we're perfectly clear, when he says the people who are calling into the meeting, who are all upset, he's talking about the people whose tax dollars pay his salary and who he has invested with incredible power to manage the affairs of. So he is an ungrateful public servant. That's what we're hearing. A spoiled little boy who, well, that's very vogue now, isn't it? It's in vogue.
Permanent solutions to this by without putting as one of my service providers puts it, without putting people to a moment of choice. There has to be a time when a person who's living on the streets has an opportunity to choose to be housed.
That's not true.
And they have to be given
why is
an
that the case?
appropriate
That's the case in your nightmare
and
land.
available and accessible opportunity for that housing. But if they turn it down, and if they choose not to do that for reasons that are not legitimate reasons,
According
the
to whom?
alternative
According
of
to you?
living on the
Guy
streets
who got elected with like
is
10% of the public
can
voting?
never be acceptable. A lot of the advocates
not
talk
how this
about,
works.
you know,
It's not how democracy works.
the number of deaths that we've had among our homeless population, and it's sobering and it's horrifying.
They're dead because
But
we're
you know,
withholding
a lot of
our tax
the
dollars to
deaths
help
that
them.
we experience,
We're
and
spending
a lot
them on
of
weapons. They kill them. That's why
adverse
they're dead.
ramifications that we experience are the result
$3.5 billion
of
for the police
crimes
department.
in
Can
which
you
the
imagine what we would
homeless
do
are
with that?
victimized, or it's the result of their untreated mental illness or untreated
That's so,
substance abuse that would be
wrong and stigmatizing.
much easier avoided if they were not living on the streets.
Right.
So at some point,
It's not-
it is better for that person, and it will be a
Evil.
harm reduction
You know, they might be
measure
like, "Oh, I wish we could
to
just take
get
down
people
temperature.
off
We
the
can't. When you
streets,
take us to hell, you
know,
devils."
by offering them, by providing outreach, by providing services. But at the end of the day,
Blah, blah, blah,
by telling them,
blah.
now is the day you are coming off the streets and taking the services that we're offering. If you don't have that, there are going to be people who are going to continue to die on the streets. So I think it's important that we continue to have this discussion about what is the proper balance that we strike. When and where shall we provide enforcement relating to this? And I welcome Mr. Cedillo's suggestion. I think that we keep that dialogue going. I'd like to have a discussion like this every week. I think it was a terrific opportunity for us to continue to build
What's up, Gabriel?
consensus.
Thank you.
I will
for
say that there are
getting
multiple things
involved
that Mr. Blumenfield is
in
attempting to address in
municipal
this motion.
politics.
Each one has different policy aspects that we need to take into account. I don't think there should be any controversy among any of us about the need to keep the public right-of-way accessible.
There is
That
quite a bit
is
of controversy.
That should
but
be
I'm
a
gonna mute this guy.
non-controversial issue that
You see, that's
people are entitled
that's
to
not
be able
accurate
to use.
because it could be. Can I put closed caption on this? Yes, I can. It could be that we used our streets and our public spaces very differently. He's talking about rite of passage for cars. He's talking about freeways. When you don't own a car, which many, if not most, Californians, can't afford a car or struggle to afford a car, it's a completely different ballgame. So everything that this guy is saying is completely through the filter of someone who lives a life detached from the material hardships of most Californians. I think that's fair to say. There we go. Got the closed caption. Again, it's quite an image I have in the background. It's like just absurd. I'm good. Thanks for asking. I got a viewer that's crazy.
Compelling arguments that are for the best interests of the people who are being served by those facilities.
How are
as
you
well
going to tell
as
them
the
what their best
surrounding
interests
neighborhood.
are?
This is not a NIMBY issue. This is an issue that we want to encourage
That's
more
bullshit.
development of more shelters and more housing. We do
Put
want to
the
do that,
homeless
and
into
it makes it
shelters!
easier for our city
Be careful with
to
this shit,
accept
man.
that need if they realize that with that comes a certain amount of area that is going to be safer on the streets and cleared of street camping, of encampments. At the same time, it's better for the people who are in shelters.
These people are
if they
just
aren't
so
surrounded
fascinated
by people
with
who
like
are
the encampments, and it's like,
interacting with them.
how much time do they spend there
And
talking to
service
those people?
providers
How much
will
time
tell you that.
do they
There's
spend once again in the shoes of someone
problem that they have
who's
on
in the
especially
bottom,
with
say,
people suffering
60
from
percentile of economic class in this state of California?
So,
Probably very little, like most landlords,
I
probably
think
very little time.
we need to have that buffer zone around particularly the bridge housing shelters. So I think I would like to see this discussion continue. I think we all should embrace, a set of goals that we should collectively embrace and not polarize this issue just because the public is polarized about it. We should accept as our priority, we should accept as one of our goals the fact that we acknowledge, and Mr. Bonin, I think, said this very eloquently to start us off, the status quo is not acceptable to any of us, and we have to ensure
Except you
that
made it.
living on
You
the
made the
street
status
is
quo.
not
You are the status quo,
seen as a
bro.
norm.
You
This
don't
is
like the
not
status
something
quo?
that
Retire,
can
old
be
man.
Acceptable, no matter where we are in this issue, number one. Number two, we have to redouble our efforts to ensure that the people who are living on the streets because of mental health and substance abuse
Hi, Claudia.
issues are getting
How's it
help that
going?
they need with full funding for that from the county and the state, so that we can ensure that the root cause of their homelessness is dealt with. Number three, we have to continue to press forward with the
The LA
housing
City Council is
resources
the
that
root
we're
cause of
building, but also
homelessness.
other resources.
$3.5
The
billion
navigation resources,
for the LAPD.
potentially additional.
Can you imagine if
outreach that
we put
would
$1 billion
control,
towards solving
and
homelessness
other services
in
to
the
help
city?
address this and to build more temporary and permanent housing. But number four, we also have to address that as we're doing those things and when we do those things, we have to have some mechanism to compel compliance with those goals.
He means violence.
So that there is
He wants to compel
no
compliance
longer
with violence.
a
That's what that's
situation
code
where
for.
entire
I mean,
areas are
it's
blighted,
not even coded, it's just the truth.
by
police.
refuse, to make sure that people are not choosing
Doesn't have to be
live
that
on
way.
the street as a lifestyle choice, or as a result of a mental illness or substance abuse problem that is causing them not to be able to make the decisions that are in the best interests of themselves, the decisions that will help them help save their lives. So without some kind of an enforcement mechanism, we're never going to
Some
get over
kind
that
of gun.
bridge. So, Madam President, I support the suggestion that we continue this discussion. I think that the direction that Mr. Blumenfield has started us on is a goal that we need to continue to work towards. There's things that, in my view, I would be more comfortable with if we could refine better. I think the suggestions that Mr. Bonin presented in his substitute motion are good suggestions as well, and in some respects, things that are long overdue, like the sharing of data and making available to service providers and law enforcement and our offices and everyone else who impacts the homeless population, accurate, complete data about shelter availability, about case history, and about the other things that we need to be able to solve individuals' problems. So there's some really good things in there. But I think
I didn't hear a
they're
single
on
really
separate
good
tracks.
thing in that.
So,
I didn't hear anything about
in my
putting
view, we
money
should just
towards
continue both of
like
those
actual
issues in council,
solutions.
continue this
I just heard
dialogue,
about
work with the city attorney.
garbage
And
ideas.
I'm sorry, one last thing on the freeway overpasses, because this is directly related to the Judge Carter litigation. I think that whatever solution we shape, and I'm sensitive to what Ms. Flores said about having an ordinance in place first. But I think that the terms of that ordinance do need to be
God
contained within the
Was
overall
it
settlement
Kevorkian, I
package.
think is his name, yeah.
Because
Paul
I want,
Kevorkian.
in the ideal world, the ordinance that we develop,
How
if
long
we
has this
develop
guy
it
been?
pertaining to overpasses with the plaintiffs in that case,
Kevorkian,
we have a better
excuse me.
opportunity to ensure the defensibility
Oh,
of
no,
that
maybe not.
ordinance as we go forward. And we don't give up a potential item for discussion in the
Paul,
larger
is that his
settlement
name?
context.
Are there
So
two
I would
Pauls?
like to see that be to evolve within the context of that settlement negotiation as well. So
Whatever.
all that being said, Madam President, that was a lot. I would support.
You did say a lot,
the
dude. They
motion
don't
to
stop him.
continue
They
this
don't.
in
They
council,
just let him talk and talk and
rather
talk and talk.
than we refer it to committee.
They give you a minute. You just stand before
Thank you, Mr.
and
Krikorian.
speak your piece.
Mr. Cedillo, did you have an announcement? I need to get to Ms. Rodriguez.
Yes, Madam Chair, real quickly, we will reschedule the scheduled Housing Committee meeting. We will work with your office to find the.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank God they
Ms.
did that.
Rodriguez?
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Mr. Krikorian, I think, for framing the conversation and all the various elements that needed to be addressed in the conversation.
This
These
is
are
so,
difficult
like,
conversations to have, but I want to thank you, Mr.
self-congratulatory
Blumenfield, for helping to bring this forward,
kind
because in
of,
fact, we do need to have something on the books with respect to enforcement. And as was reflected by the report the CLA did in reviewing some of the other municipalities within the county's jurisdiction on which camping laws and parking restriction
where she is,
ordinances
dude.
they have in place, they all have them in place. They're eligible for enforcement when they offer sufficient shelter beds and they offer the opportunity for these individuals to be sheltered.
This is just so
With
sick.
respect to
Have
Paxton
any
and
of these people
Bradley
ever
and the
been homeless
protocols
for
that we
any period of time?
memorialized in that process, it was to,
And they're talking
again,
about them like
take
they're
a
not human
local
beings.
example and turn it into a
You will go
citywide
here,
protocol,
you will do
because
this.
it is very complicated.
And then one day you
against
will get
all
on the
of
cattle car.
various service providers. We don't have a singular methodology. And so, I suggested to Mr. Blumenfield, as we've memorialized the Paxton and Bradley protocols, that be the example of what's embodied in this ordinance, so that we can have a consistent protocol that helps to assure, because all of this is based in the fundamental goal of getting these individuals housed. I just want to make it clear. It's not for the sake of enforcement. It's for the sake of offering these individuals, we get them housed. And once we get them housed,
There's always in the history of the world been homeless people to some extent. I'm not saying we shouldn't get everyone into a home who wants to live in a home. But this idea that every person must be housed in the same way that they're thinking of and they're presenting it is not necessarily the case. And it's so sad that such a diverse, wonderful city has such a narrow-minded presentation politically. Is really unfortunate, because we have unbelievable resources here as far as the thoughts and ideas, and in this greed-centered, fiscal-minded, above all else kind of mentality. You could call it neoliberal mentality, I guess, whatever. We could pick words for it, but that's winning out so strongly in this. It always does, and it's so sad. It doesn't have to be that way.
certain council districts, when we talk about the numbers of units that we've constructed, not just in permanent supportive housing and bridge housing, and thank you, Mr. Krikorian, for really capturing that. But let's talk about affordable housing and the numbers of affordable housing units that we've also provided to help make sure that families don't end up on the street to begin with. Many of us have disproportionately had a great deal of those numbers of units also constructed in our districts. And so while we're working to fulfill housing for everyone, we should reserve the right for those communities to also still be respected by having cleanliness and quality of life standards that would be given to any other part of this city. And so the whole intent is to put something on the books that will help to honor that. But it is through the initial goal of offering housing to these individuals. And frankly, when we talk about what's happening at these encampments, adjacent to these
when they talk
that
about
are
it,
within
not what
the
they
500
see,
feet
not what
of,
they know is happening,
the
they
overpasses.
talk about.
Many of these
An
there have been
unaccountable,
many deaths
reckless
associated
city
with
council.
people just on the on-ramps and off-ramps who've gotten hit by cars. And
So
and
then
the
you
trauma
get to take them
inflicts,
away to your centers,
those
or they get
individuals
arrested
that are
and taken
encamped
to
in those
jail?
areas, but more importantly,
That doesn't make sense.
individuals that are just going about their daily life. So we have a very complicated set of goals here.
So some people get to go
I
about their
think
daily
it's
life,
important
and
for
some
us to
people have to
continue
either
with
go to
this
the shelter
conversation.
or go to the jail.
I'm hoping, my goal is that this is not something that's
So you
just
can't
gonna
just
get
stay where you were
down the road,
sleeping
but that we continue to
in
engage
public in
in
the
these very
United States
difficult
of America.
conversations, that we memorialize protocols that will in fact allow us to effectuate the enforcement and protections of these areas once we have housed individuals at those encampments. But the reason why places like Long Beach
So
and
you
the
ha- if
county,
you're in an encampment,
that are
you
also in
have
the
to go to
county
a
of Los
shelter
Angeles are able to
or the
do
jail.
their enforcement. And Judge Carter, to your point, Mr.
And
Blumenfield,
what an
Judge
encampment
Carter
is defined
was
by you.
explicit in this.
Same thing with a
is
shelter.
that we
We
need
can
to
probably
have
agree
something
on
the
what a
books
jail is. But
in order to protect these neighborhoods once we have offered and successfully placed these
Protect the
individuals into
neighborhoods.
housing. And that is what we need to be doing. We have to put something on the books.
protect it from whom?
And our communities
Who's gonna
deserve it,
protect
our
the
residents deserve it.
homeless
They're-
people from the house
we
people?
need to make sure, and
I'm
for
more
those
worried
of
about
us,
it
and
that way
and
around.
we can, you know, we can each
Based on
cite
this
all
kangaroo
of the
court.
variety of bridge housing and interim permanent supportive housing and safe parking facilities that we've created. But we do need to have an end game here, because otherwise we're going to continue on this cycle with no end in sight. And we need to have enforcement mechanisms that help to preserve and improve the quality of life
Violence.
in these neighborhoods.
Police
So
violence.
I
That's
wanna
what
thank you, Mr.
enforcement mechanism
Blumenfield.
means.
I think, as sanitation and everyone is, LASA is involved in providing the documentation and the protocols, it should be incorporated as part of this so that we can help to make sure that we preserve all of the work and associated with the efforts that we are going through right now in clearing these
More
areas,
work has been
because
done.
otherwise we're never going to get out of the cycle of
Someone comes
of
to your
those
house,
same
punches you in the
locations
face,
being
you call it work?
repopulated. And it's about giving our communities
Unless they're a
the
politician.
dignity and the respect that they deserve after enduring many of the circumstances that they have had to deal with in these areas. So thank you, colleagues, for all of your insightful comments. I look forward to these protocols being memorialized as part of this, Mr. Blumenfield, and we can talk about the amendments on that so that it's explicitly clear for everyone that the actual goal as part of this enforcement effort is primary offering of housing and getting these individuals housed. And we have examples of that. We've successfully executed that.
If that were
And
true,
the
why
goal
would
is
you have
to
spent so much
preserve
time
the
convincing us
work
of that?
so
Kinda
that we
sounds
don't
like their
have
goal is to take
chase our
everyone
tails on a
on the
specific
street
location,
at their will
without
into a
any end in
shelter
Thank
or
you.
a
Ms.
jail.
Rodriguez, Mr. Price?
Thank you, again, Madam President.
It's
I just
disgusting.
want to agree with all my colleagues. I think our goal certainly is to provide housing, not to enforce. That should not be the focus, but to provide housing. And like Councilmember Blumenfeld and Rodriguez, I have plans to move individuals into shelters as early as next month. Again, with the homelessness to home, the encampment to home program, and I think it's going to be very, very important to move forward with those plans. You know, we've got LASA, we've got Hopkins, we got Judge Carter, but if we
Right.
don't move expeditiously, I think all of our efforts are just going to be wasted. So I look forward to continuing this, to bringing it back quickly, working with all parties as we develop the protocols that are going to be necessary so that we can move forward. Otherwise, I think we're stalling, and we do no one any service, most of which is that we're leaving those who are unsheltered out in the cold again. So let's move forward expeditiously. Thank you.
Thank
Three
you,
and a half
Mr.
billion
Price.
dollars on the police.
Members, so I know that's been a lengthy discussion, and I think that's good. I think the debate and the conversation and the ongoing discussions
That's a
is
very nice
great.
thing to say.
But I've been serving on this council now for 7 years, and it also feels like we've been having 7 years worth of discussions and debates about how to deal with this homeless crisis. And Mr. Bonin, I couldn't agree with you more. I think the
man.
fact that the city attorney was able to turn this ordinance around so quickly is kind of shocking. Because I've been waiting for the last 7 years to get us
City
moving
attorney turned around
in
a
a
completely
direction where we
unconstitutional
can
ordinance.
stop,
It's like basic con law.
for lack of a better word,
If that was
the
on a
bleeding
final exam in
of
constitutional
people who
law,
are continuing
you'd be
to
expected to
become
find
homeless and
10
living on our
things.
streets, and that has
There's
not
4 or
happened.
5 of them be as solid
And I also think we
as
need
the
to have an
ground we're
honest
standing on.
conversation about enforcement. I know it's a scary word. I know it's a controversial word. But Ms. Rodriguez, you and I know
It is-
what that looks like in
it's a
our
murderous
neighborhoods
word.
because we grew up there.
600, what,
And we
616
chose to raise our
people?
families there.
Under Jackie Lacey.
And we chose
Dead?
to
Brothers, mothers?
represent those neighborhoods. In
Fathers,
the San
sisters?
Fernando Valley, we often don't get credit for the fact that we've been sheltering, providing services
They're obsessed with
neediest
giving themselves credit.
among us for
I mean,
decades.
the politicians
For decades,
in
Mr.
Los
Cruz.
Angeles
In fact,
are
when Measure
on another level. On another,
HHH
give them
was
an
passed,
Oscar. Give them
if
an
it
Oscar.
wasn't
Been
for
all around
me
this country.
advocating
None of them are as crazy
that
as
we
these people.
figure out how we equitably build housing across this city, guess where most of the permanent supportive housing would have been built in the San Fernando Valley, in our districts. Because that's just the way we do things here. That's what we do to communities of color. That's how we respect communities of color. We put things that nobody else wants in communities like ours. That's why we have the Valley Generating Station. That's why we have the dumps in our district. That's why we
Is that
have
why we have a $3.5 billion budget for the police?
dozens of landfills
Is that why we have
that are
tanks
no
in the
longer
streets?
operating, but they were in our districts. And the majority of services and affordable housing that nobody else
Non-lethal
wants
weapons
to build.
blinding people?
And so, members, we keep talking about the status quo, but that's exactly what
Status
we do
quo
every
has got
time
to go.
we don't act. We choose to continue our failed policies and our legal settlements that get us absolutely nowhere. And what does that mean? That means we're choosing to let Black and brown
Means you're
homeless
spineless.
people live and die in our streets every single day. And we are also choosing to let Black and brown neighborhoods, which have more freeways than most, continue to be overwhelmed with encampments. That's what we say every single time we don't act. And we're doing this while most
devious.
entitled communities and more affluent
She's very
populations
confident that
advocate out of guilt
she throws around certain terminology
because
she'll
they
be
have
able
the luxury to
to
ask for more
justify
time.
whatever she's saying. But when you think of what she's saying, I
And
don't
how
think
do
it
we
makes very
allow
much
that?
sense.
When I look out and I see our brothers and sisters being homeless, and it's often our neighborhoods
And then you
that
turn
are
around,
overwhelmed.
and vote for a $3.5 billion police department with more helicopters than any other police department in the world, and tons of hyper aggressive young high school graduates who get a career path to the upper middle class. Let's put it that way, you know. I mean, what we do with the police in this city is despicable. And when I say we, I mean our representatives, our failed politicians, like the council member who's speaking.
not good enough.
There's like one or
Because
two
our
folks on
neighbors
this council that
have
are
to deal with an
willing to
overburden
act humane because
of
they think
things
it's in
that
their
other
electoral
neighborhoods
interest,
don't
but
have to see every single day.
there's
and that's the
virtually
message we
no
send. And we get
no member
vilified.
who is serious
We
about
get vilified
the
for
politics of
standing up
health
for
and
our
wellness.
neighborhoods, for saying we've built the housing, we're trying to make sure people have access to a bed, and we're trying to clear the
Access
right
to
of
a
way.
bed and a $3.5
Because we
billion
deserve
police force.
Clean streets,
Billion.
just like the West Side does. We deserve that. Every neighborhood
What would
should.
you do with the $3.5 billion?
And we
Comment
give them a
below.
fight for that. Members, I think the conversation is going to get tougher. I think people are fed up, no matter how you look at this. People are done with seeing people living on our streets and seeing homeless folks.
See, the problem
not
isn't that people live
getting the
there, Tara,
services
it's that
they
people are
deserve.
seeing them.
Black and brown people have been victims of a failed mental health system and a failed healthcare system that has not produced anything for us. And the result is our people are dying on the streets. So members, Mr. Bonnet, I hear what you're saying about sending this to committee. And I would agree
But
with
we
the exception
need
that I
to
think we
stop
need
the
to have a
homeless right now.
conversation in public,
They're gonna be on the
and the
streets.
entire
Oh my
council
God.
needs to
Where do you want to
engage
go? If you're on
and
the
be
streets
honest
and they catch you, you're gonna
about
they
what
catch
we're
you
going to do about the enforcement.
standing or
I
sitting on
keep
the
hearing
sidewalk.
Members are going to meet their
Literally,
their,
that's their name.
their housing needs. They're
We're
building
walking
as fast as they can, and they're going to be
They
at
wanna make it so you can't walk on
capacity.
it.
And God forbid that their homeless population move into my district. I'll tell you what, build more. Build more. That's what you can do. Don't stop building. Continue to build. So that your homeless population doesn't have to move into my
This
district.
is so disgusting.
Continue to
this is
build.
so
That's the right thing
disgusting.
to do. That's the
She
human
should be
thing
ashamed
to
of
do.
herself for talking
That's
about
what we
human
should
beings
all be
this way.
doing. We shouldn't
And-
stop
and
building. We should
she-
continue
this
to
is
build
disgusting.
to make sure our homeless population doesn't move from
You gotta
community to
vote,
community,
I guess.
from district to district.
Vote,
That's
call
what we all
in,
should be doing.
Mobilize,
So, Mr. Bonin, I hear
strike.
what you're saying, but
That's
I'm
probably
going
the
to
most important thing you can do
this
is, as an
item.
individual is go on strike.
So November
I think it's the
24th,
most powerful
4th,
thing your average person can do.
in council, so that we can continue to dive in.
Don't let the union
continue to
stop you if
come
you
up
have one.
with
Get the
real
union to strike
solutions
with you, but if they
and
won't
not
let,
just
they
kick
won't
this
let you,
item
still go
down
on
the
strike.
road because it's convenient, because it's an election year, whatever the case might be. I want us to have a deep and honest discussion among ourselves about what we're going to do with this enforcement piece as we move forward with Judge Carter's, with the Judge Carter lawsuit. So without objection, I want this item back in
Madam President,
committee
you mentioned November 21st, just to clarify.
to November 24th.
24th.
November 24th, we're going to continue this item. Without objection, that will be the order. Thank you very much.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Some of us are on the queue, and some of us may have an objection.
Are you objecting for it to come back to council on November 24th?
I would like to say,
Sure.
thank you. Thank you, Madam President. I appreciate your comments and the sentiment and the frustration. It's one we all share. I have an enormous population of unhoused people in my district. Venice has one of the largest concentrations of homelessness in the city and some of the largest homeless encampments. And I think it would do all of us well. I would be more than happy to come to your district if we all went to each other's districts and saw the commonality.
I mean, what is
What
that
we are
going
doing.
to,
People are done.
you know?
People across the spectrum are absolutely done. And the only thing that we can do to make them
Many
more
people are
angry
done.
is to do
People-
the wrong
people are done with the
thing,
police.
Which is why
You
I'm
just
glad we
ignore
are continuing this matter today. 'Cause
He's
we
not
were
the worst
rushed, I
one, but
think,
they all
into
ignore it,
the
even
wrong situation. We have all done a lot in our districts in building housing and shelter and safe parking, but we still have not done what we need to do to get to where we can do the type of enforcement that has been
Does he have a
envisioned
cross?
in what was originally before us today and what I think will change. We will either wind up with a system where we will do
They say that
enforcement
not-
with no
not as a
alternatives,
critique of what
which will
the
be
cross
litigated and make
separation
things
of church
worse
and
in the
state.
long run, or we will tell people that we are putting an
You could
enforcement
critique
law on
what
the
a
books
cross
and then not
means, though.
enforce it, and just make the situation worse. I agree that we should continue this. I'm relatively agnostic on whether it's committee or council. But I think if we want to have a situation that results in a
Agnostic,
resolution
he's got a
that has
big cross
progress,
there.
that houses people, then that is a conversation that personally, I think it's only going to work well under Judge Carter, bringing everybody together, because I don't know that we have the ability to get all the different parties together. But if we are going to do this through council and not committee,
They're gonna get
I would
sued.
recommend that any
They
proposals
think they've been
that
sued
we
before they
are
do
all
shit like
going
this.
to make
ACLU would be on them,
about
I bet.
protocols, about specifics, be
It's
put
just-
out to the
It goes
public
against
at
everything.
least a week in
that
advance,
the
so
First
that
Amendment's
public health
supposed to be.
officials,
Not
such as
just the
service
speech, but all of it.
agencies and stakeholders can weigh
I think
in.
I can name
we
all
need to
five,
give
maybe I
them
can be in the Supreme
time
Court.
so that we can get significant input from them that can help us shape this in a concrete way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bonin. Mr. Blumenfield?
They cut
I'm okay
Bonin
with
off.
continuing it. I think it's the right thing. I just want to say though, from my perspective, you know, I spent the last several weeks housing 100% of the
this-
people who were under my underpasses. And by not
Under
having
his
a
underpass.
mechanism now,
You only
by
underpasses,
hunting,
Tool?
in essence, and I know we have to because we don't have
You're a tool
agreement.
that people think they do.
But those underpasses will then fill up with new folks. And we're gonna have to repeat the effort all over again. And I know Mr. Price has some underpasses he's been working on housing people, just like we housed people first. No enforcement, no police, there was
That sounds
no
like
enforcement,
paradise.
but there was a choice date. We did tell people that there was a choice date, and I just want to end by, it made a difference. there was a gentleman who was featured in in the LA Times, named Andrew, who lived under
Jesus
the Fallbrook
Christ.
underpass. Had a lot of conversations with him. And he said to me,
They're getting tired.
thank you.
They're not
for-
even
for
making,
that
even by
choice
their
to-
own standards, they're not making
said,
a lot of sense right now.
I wouldn't have, I needed something to get me to that next step. And he's like, I want to leave. And he had taken up 40 feet of space with this long tarp, and it was a huge area that he had taken up. But he said, I want to leave here with dignity on the 27th, which was our choice date. I'm going to take 2 suitcases and everything else can go. And fortunately, he signed some documents. There were actually protesters, advocates who went there to try to convince him to stay.
You're a protester
at the
first
underpass.
in his eyes, and
But
maybe
we
you can
had
advocate
spoken
also.
to him so much that he's like, no, I'm going to leave with dignity. And I want to go. And so he signed over and said, everything I'm leaving behind is trash. It wasn't a question of deciding what was what. And he left and went into shelter.
I wish you actually went up a mountain like that.
But we're going to have
did
more
a
Andrews
stupid
and more
meeting.
folks like that who are going to end up in those underpasses.
Just a stupid
And
background.
that's a problem for me in my district, but as we move forward, it's going to be a problem for all of you in your districts if you're going to try to make the efforts that we've made to get those underpasses clear. And that's, again, it's all about housing and getting people housed and not having to have enforcement. But we have to come up with something to make those choice dates real. Because for people like Andrew,
Maybe
it made the
something you
difference.
could do is take some of the
I mean, it was
billions of dollars you spend on one of the largest paramilitary forces that have ever been assembled in the history of human civilization, known as the Los Angeles Police Department. Maybe the solution to this homeless problem, maybe, is you take some of that treasure that you waste on that frivolous project of violence, and you put it towards actually helping people. Give every homeless person, anyone who says I need help with finding a home, give them 15, give them 20, $30,000. How many people could you do with $1 billion?
And now what's before us?
Let me look.
Council
I'll do the
has verbal motions.
Can we go ahead and start with the first one?
Thank you, Madam President. The first verbal motion introduced by Councilmember Martinez and seconded by Councilmember
25,000.
Rodriguez is referred to
That's
the Energy
40,000.
Climate
So if you
Change and
cut
Environmental Justice
LAPD by
Committee,
33%,
and it moves
just
that the
give every
Department of
person
Water
who's
and Power
struggling in the
report
city
with
with
the
housing
plan and
$40,000.
timeline for decommissioning
You made
the
under
Valley
50,000 last year.
Generating Station.
Here's 40,000. Make
Verbal
it a
confirmation
ladder
of the seconders
up to
required.
$100,000 or something.
Confirmed.
There you go. You think
Thank
we'd still have
you.
as many
Next.
problems as we do?
Thank you.
Think people would still be
The
as sick and
next
sad?
motion referred
I
to
don't think so.
PennPAR and Budget and Finance.
Cut it all, and
Committee
you can triple
is
that.
co-presented
I do
by
believe you should cut it
Councilmember
all. I think we need to start over with the
Martinez and
LAPD.
Rodriguez, and seconded
lost the
by
public's trust.
Councilmember O'Farrell. And this moves that the CLA and other departments report back on a new department regarding Department for Families, Children, and Community
The
Investment.
clerk does the best job at these meetings every
Confirmation
single
of the
time.
co-presenter is
The
required.
clerk does a fine job.
Confirmed.
Thank you.
Mr.
Next.
O'Farrell, can you confirm that for us, please?
Confirmed,
All right,
thank you.
thank you. Next.
Thank you. The next is a commendatory resolution introduced by Councilmember Wesson. This recognizes Mrs. Agatha Daniels Lang and extends birthday wishes on her 95th birthday. And a seconder?
Is there a second?
Happy
Second.
birthday, Agatha.
Second by Ms. Rodriguez. Next one.
Thank you. The last commendatory resolution introduced by Councilmember Wesson commends Frederick and Lori Samatar Smith for their commitment to urban renewal in Los Angeles and their devotion to conjunctive points. And a seconder?
How much money did they donate?
Second.
Second by Mr. Koretz.
Thank you. That completes all the motions
He's gotta
that the
be a
clerk
good
has.
boy.
Okay, thank you. Members, Mr. Buscaino.
Thank you, Madam President. I have 2 resolutions. The first one, members, is in regards to the rebound of the tourism industry.
Oh, yeah.
I'd like
That's really what we should be
and it
focused on in
offers
this
a number
pandemic.
of tax, local state
He
tax
loves the
incentives.
Dodgers too. That's
It's called the Hospitality and Commerce Job Recovery Act of 2020. Would establish and improve travel-related tax incentives among other incentives. So with that, therefore, let it be resolved that with the concurrence of the mayor, that by the adoption of this resolution, the city of Los Angeles hereby includes in its 2019-2020 federal legislative program support for Senate Bill 4807, the Hospitality and Commerce Job Recovery Act, which would establish and approve travel-related tax credit programs to support tourism and hospitality industries.
It's the
Is there a
most
second?
important thing in this
Second.
guy's world.
Thank you. And lastly,
It's so sad.
this up
LA is
here,
such an
it's,
amazing
like to-
city.
it's a resolution
This is
of
not
surplus
representative of it
donation
at all.
to Beirut. Move that the city clerk be instructed to inform the city of Beirut, Lebanon. The surplus equipment must be claimed within 60 days from the date of council approval of the request or notification of availability of equipment, whichever occurs first.
I'm
At
lost
which
while we're
time
talking
the
about
equipment
Lebanon.
will revert to the city's surplus equipment pool for disposal by the Department of General Services.
Weapons.
And said equipment is a LA Fire Department Seagrave triple engine fire engine.
Second.
Thank you.
Second by
That's-
Mr. Kokorian.
Thank you.
Madam President, for clarification, did Councilmember Krikorian second the first resolution?
No, that was Mr. Blumenfield.
Blumenfield.
So it looks like that's the result. Is that they're gonna push it back? I think into November. They said.
Thank you, Madam President.
Which is better, I guess, than them
was
approving this today.
Los Angeles Fire Department.
Although the sooner that they
Submit a
approve it,
report
the
to
sooner there can be
Public Works
lawsuits,
within 30 days
which
for
will
the
be the best
revocation
part of
of the
this.
sale of
If
one
they
LAFD
do end up choosing to
1996
do it,
Red Seagrave triple engine
because they're really
at
going to
below
be
market
exposed
value in
as
accordance
just
with LA's
American. I
Section
mean, not
22.547.
political, but if you
the
object
city
to our
of
freedoms that are in the
Obregón,
Constitution, I
to
think
meet
it's fair to
the
call you
objectives of
anti-American.
mutual cooperation between the cities, and a finding be made that the city of Obregón, Mexico is eligible to purchase the one LAFD
This is the bottom of the barrel
1996 Red Seagrave triple engine
call it
at
quits
below
here.
market value in accordance with 22.547. I further move that the city attorney expedite preparation of appropriate documents to effectuate the sale and transfer, and further move that the city clerk be instructed to inform the city of Obregón, Mexico, that the surplus equipment must be claimed within 60 days from the date of council approval of the request or notification of availability of
All right.
equipment, whichever
I'm gonna
comes
call it, I
later,
think.
at which time the
Um,
equipment will
Well, let's see
revert
if they're about to
to
wrap
the
up.
city's surplus equipment pool for disposal by the Department of General Services.
Second. Second.
Was second by
Thank
Mr. Cedillo.
And that's
Any
it.
others, Ms. Rodriguez?
Nope, that concludes. Thank
Okay,
you.
Mr. O'Farrell?
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to introduce a resolution
Oh, foul.
demanding reunification of 545 toddlers and children
Oh.
to their parents.
It's like everything that they
was
have
the
nothing
result
to
of
actually
Donald Trump's
change,
administration's
so-
zero tolerance
so righteous.
policy. Joining me in this resolution as the movers are yourself, Mr. Gil Cedillo, Ms. Monica Rodriguez, Mr. Kevin De Leon, Mr. Herb Wesson, seconded by Curran Price. It reads as follows. Now therefore be it resolved with the concurrence of the mayor
Good
that
job
by
putting in the fancy language,
adoption
bro.
of this resolution, the city of Los Angeles hereby includes in the 2019-2020 federal legislative program sponsorship and or support of legislation to ensure that under no circumstances, aside from any threat of abuse or neglect, should children ever be separated from their parents as they seek to enter the U.S. through asylum or any other means.
But if they
including
come
legislation
here
that strengthens
and they're homeless kids with their parents, and the parent sits on the sidewalk in a way that the cops don't like, then a fair number of you guys are down to separate kids from parents, aren't you? Or are you going to take a kid to the jail with the parent?
government action and the Flores Agreement, which prescribes national standards for the housing, detention, and release of children detained by federal immigration authorities.
I will confirm that I'm co-presenting this with Mr. O'Farrell,
Confirmed.
Mr. Rodriguez as well. Mr. O'Farrell, do you have any other?
Yes, and it's also Mr. Cedillo, Mr. De Leon, Mr. Wesson, and
Mr.
second, Mr. Price.
Okay, thank you. Do you have another, motion?
That is all, Madam President.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, where are we at now?
Council has motions for posting and referral.
Posted and referred. Any announcements, members? Adjourning motions? Mr. Rue?
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, I'm very sorry to share with you today the passing of Stephen Dean Cuccinello. Steve was born on October 7th, 1948 at St. Joseph's Hospital in Burbank. He grew up in Tarzana. He attended Notre Dame High School in Sherman Oaks.
There he is.
Later, he attended Valley College in Los Angeles.
The headliner
His life
for
changed in the
Tuesday.
summer of 1964 when he met his future wife, Paulana, at Sorrento Beach in Santa Monica. He lived in Studio
Does he do
City
this for the
47
people who are
years
killed by
and
police
then
in his
moved to
district?
Toluca Lake. His family was his life, and he was married to his wife, Paulana, for 52 years.
Rest in peace to the guy he's
His
talking about.
greatest joy in life was his son Nino, and the gifts that followed. His daughter-in-law Marissa, and his two grandchildren,
Who is this guy?
Santino and Nina. Steve worked in his father's cabinet shop, designing and selling custom cabinetry. Ever since he was 14, he had an incredible eye for design, and he knew that was his passion. His career, his reputation, and his great success in life are all attributed to his kind and generous personality. Steve was an incredibly loving man who treated everybody with kindness and respect. He will be deeply missed by all that knew
Says
him
the
and
McCarthyist.
trusted him. Thank you, Madam President.
Any other adjourning motions, members? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much. I know it's past 4 o'clock. It's been a very, very long meeting, but certainly appreciate your patience, including everyone, members of the public who are listening in. Our meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Woo! That's the best part of any meeting like this. Beautiful music. Should I not play this music? Am I gonna get my account blocked? What are they playing? Oh, they're playing music. Oh, I thought it was like a little montage of the best, most dramatic moments. Okay, so the score of that game, the people won a continuance basically. We're going to next month, and then I guess we'll have a chance to keep on this. I was one of many people called in today. And everyone I thought who called on, at least against this nonsense, spoke very cogently. And I'm excited to see where it goes. I think the tide could be turning when it comes to local LA politics. I've only been here for 4 years, so there are people who have been around longer than I have, but I have been pretty involved with some stuff. So my sense is that there's a chance. It's really going to depend largely on that City Council District 4. Which is where Rue and Raman, I believe is how you say the candidate's name, are facing off. And that's going to be a very interesting, important election. And we'll know soon enough, I suppose. And I really want to thank everyone, especially from a certain household out there. You know what I'm talking about. Thank you for always supporting me, and your kindness goes unmatched. All right. Well, thanks everyone for getting involved with city politics a little bit. Thank you for putting up with my commentary. There's one perspective of many, but I think it's important that we all share our perspectives where we can. All right. Thanks. Until next time. Bye.